What's up, ladies and gents, and welcome back to another Age of Empires Definitive Edition Civilization overview. As you can see here, last time we covered the Babylonians, so this time we look at the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians have 4 civilization bonuses, and let's look at them straight away. The first bonus, start the game with plus 50 of all resources. That's pretty straightforward. You get plus 50 wood, food, gold and stone right off the bat. Obviously the food bonus makes your villager production in the early game a lot easier and probably helps avoid downtime in your town center. The plus 50 wood helps build early game buildings like houses or a storage pit a lot easier. And then you have plus 50 gold, which really doesn't come into play until later, and as such I don't think that bonus is as important as the previous two. And in the stone department, this can come into play in the tool age, because slingers cost 10 stone, so you can get out 5 extra slingers without actually gathering any stone. So that can be beneficial. If we look at the academy units and elephant units, we see that we have plus 25% hit points and the camel riders plus 15% hit points. That is the second civilization bonus. What exactly that means we will look at later when we look at the specific units and the practical testing. Fire galleys have plus 25% attack is our third bonus, and what I think about that we will look at in the dark. Transport ships move 25% faster is our last bonus, so 2 water bonuses. But honestly, I don't think the transport ship bonus is particularly useful apart from very select situations, so probably something we don't need to focus on too much. So next up we look at our first military building, which is the barracks. In the barracks you can see we have the slinger, which is a useful unit in the early game fighting, and due to our plus 50 stone in the start, probably not the worst option to go for. On the other hand, we see that we have almost a full line of infantry, but unfortunately we miss the legion unit. And if we scroll over to the storage pit, we can also see we miss chainmail infantry and the last attack upgrade. The positive sign is we have all the range defense, but missing legion and these 2 late game upgrades means infantry is passable into the Bronze Age, but probably not advisable beyond that. Next up we have the Archery Range, and here we can already see that into the Bronze Age we are lacking behind a little bit. We have the bowman, which is nice. We have the improved bowman, which is also quite useful. But we lack the chariot archer and we lack the composite bowman. The chariot archer is a unit that is incredibly useful when you run out of gold in the late game and the trash war starts. So missing that, definitely a big negative. Missing the composite bowman, not that big of a deal in my opinion. If we look in the Iron Age, however, we see that while we only have the horse archer and no heavy horse archer, we do have the rather rare elephant archer. And if we look over, we miss the chainmail archer armor upgrade. But on the other hand, we have the range upgrade, we have ballistics, we have alchemy, and we have nobility for the extra hit points. In addition to already having elephant units with plus 25% hit points. So the elephant archer is probably one of our strongest units available and a big strength of the Carthaginians. The other archer units, in my opinion, are nothing outstanding or special and can probably be neglected. Next up we see the siege workshop, and we can already see we are missing the catapult and the heavy catapult, which is a big blow to any sort of defense-breaking siege weaponry. We do have the stone thrower in the Bronze Age, and while that is useful, it is certainly nothing special. On the plus side, we do have the ballista and the helepolis, and those are very fine units, and that's really what saves the siege workshop a little bit. Because if we look at the government center here, we have engineering, we have alchemy, we have ballistics, we have the extra range, everything there for the helepolis. Very strong unit to complement our elephant archers with. But unfortunately, again, we miss the catapult and the heavy catapult. That really makes the siege workshop a rather middling one. I think having catapult at least would have made it very good, but yeah, unfortunately, a rather middling siege workshop. So next up we have the stable, and this is really where our bonuses start to come in. Obviously we have a scout, that's not really worth mentioning, but where it really starts being interesting, and we focus on the negative first, is in the Bronze Age missing the chariot unit and the scythe chariot in the Iron Age. Now we already established we don't have the chariot archer, and that means our only trash units, if we run out of gold, are the axeman, the bowman, and the scout. And if we have some stone, the slinger. So if you run out of gold against a civilization that has the chariots, the chariot archers, etc., you're probably doomed. Keep that in mind when you play as the Carthaginians. Very, very big negative in the stable department. Apart from that, we have the cavalry and the heavy cavalry units, which, if you think about the other units you have available, makes sense in the Bronze Age, but really in the Iron Age you probably want to transition to elephants. A strategy you can pick here is to go for cavalry or the camel riders, which get the extra HP in the Bronze Age, also a little bit depending on what your opponent is going for, and then switch over to elephants in the Iron Age. Why is cavalry so sensible in that situation? Well, because you then already get the upgrades for it, which you also need for your elephants. And obviously in the Bronze Age there are all the upgrades available, including nobility over here. The Camel Rider HP bonus really helps in the Bronze Age if you feel like going for Camel Riders. It's one of the few civs where I would actually say, yeah, build Camel Riders in the Bronze Age. But they are still fairly situational, because their stats, they still don't match cavalry in regular combat. It's really only when you want to use them as counter units that they make sense, and where they perform better than the other civilizations' Camel Riders. Now let's get to the elephant in the room, the war elephant and the armored elephant. And we are going to go into the stats right away instead of leaving it until a testing phase later on. And we just do a little bit of a format change here. We have the armored elephant with the extra HP. And unfortunately it is lacking the chainmail cavalry armor. That is in itself not that important, to be honest. And the difference between the Camel Rider and the elephant is the Camel Rider misses 2 upgrades. This one and this one. The elephant only misses this one because it doesn't benefit from those. Good to know, right? The elephants don't benefit from these attack upgrades. Fun fact. So the elephant really only misses this upgrade. Obviously we get nobility, that does affect the elephant. And now let's talk about what makes this elephant different from the other elephants. Now obviously we get the extra HP, and in turn we miss the last defense upgrade. But if you pit a Carthaginian against a Hittite elephant is fully upgraded with the defense upgrade, you find that the Carthaginian one still survives with 42 HP left. It is more durable, it has a lot of extra HP, and if you think about it, plus 25% hit points matters a lot when you have a unit with so many hit points. It makes a huge difference, because 25% of 10 hit points, that's like basically nothing. But 25% of a unit that ends up having 750 hit points, that's a lot. So that bonus really helpful. The only downside to that heavy focus on the armored elephant is the gold cost. And this is another elephant in the room we must address, because researching armored elephant requires the iron shield, which we have here. Iron shield costs 320 gold. Now we obviously need bronze shield as well to get that, which costs another 180. So that is 500 gold spent on upgrades that don't benefit our elephant. Just something to keep in mind. And then we need to spend another 1,200 gold on the elephant. So that's 1,700 gold just to be able to even build that thing. And then it costs 40 gold per elephant. So that's just something to keep in mind. Luckily, the elephant is great in tandem with the Helepolis, because the Helepolis has a ranged attack, obviously, and can pretty much cover for enemy priests, because obviously our elephants are very vulnerable to those, as they are slow and important. But please think about how you strategize your game and how you want to use the elephants, because the gold cost is tremendous, and as we already established, we are missing good trash units, so something to consider and think about. Next up on the list we have the Academy units, and we also have a 25% hit point bonus on the Academy units. And if you go for these as well, then the shield upgrades, which we just mentioned, aren't as useless as thought before. You're probably wondering, are these units any good? Because we miss the last attack upgrade, here it applies, and the last defense upgrade. Luckily we get tower shield though, and that's pretty good. Short answer, yes, they are good. Long answer, they're not great. In a direct fight against fully upgraded Centurions, they hold their own. If you pit, for example, Carthaginian versus Roman Centurions, they end up with a draw. And that's because we have 200 HP for these Centurions, and we have 160 HP for the Roman ones. But we have less attack, we have less armor, and what that means is we only do 20 damage to the Roman Centurion, and the Roman Centurion does 25 damage to us. If you do the math, we have 200 hit points, and the Roman Centurion does 25 damage per hit. That's 8 hits to kill us. We do 20 damage per hit, and the Roman Centurion has 160 hit points. That's 8 hits. So really it's all about getting the first hit, and whoever got that wins the battle. That also happens when you pit 5 versus 5. It's really all about who gets the first hit, and then whichever side happens to get the most first hits wins. So there was a lot of very close duels with one Centurion remaining, and the results flipped back and forth. So in a Centurion versus Centurion fight against a civilization with full upgrades, not much to really differentiate them. But you're probably wondering, well, yeah, Centurion versus Centurion is one thing, but what if I use it against other units? So what I did was I picked the Carthaginian centurions and I picked the Roman centurions and I pitted them against legions. I took 5 centurions, 5 Carthaginian and 5 Roman ones, and I pitted them against 10 Persian legions. Now 10 legions can't defeat 5 centurions. They just can't, unless you pick maybe Roman legions against the worst centurions in the game, but in a general sense 5 centurions beat 10 legions. But how many centurions will we have left? Well, that differs greatly. The Carthaginian centurions against the Persian legions, again 5 versus 10, we had on average 3 Carthaginian centurions left. Now we had outliers. We had one round where all 5 Carthaginian centurions survived, but that had more to do with the legions pathing around and being bugged and stuck on each other. And we also had the other direction where only 2 of the Carthaginian centurions survived, but there was also a lot of weird pathing and very rough focus fire going on. So those were outliers. The regular round had 3 Carthaginian centurions survive. When we pick the Roman centurions against the legions, however, a different picture comes to fruition, and that is, on average, 4 of them survived. That's one more for those who have trouble with numbers. And we also had one outlier round with 5 Roman centurions surviving. That happens. But we had no outliers in the other direction. All the rounds I did, and I did 15 testing rounds, had at least 4 Roman centurions survive. So in a regular melee battle, they are just better against other units, where we do not have that mathematical balance. And in that case, the Roman centurions were just better. So where do I rank these Carthaginian centurions? Do I think they are worth it with that bonus despite lacking the upgrades? Well, generally, if the situation arises where they are useful, you can go for them. But you should consider one thing. You have armored elephants. They get a huge bonus. They are possibly the best in the game. Maybe not the most cost effective, but possibly the best in the game. You have Helepolis for range. I'm not sure why you want to go for centurions, because we already established gold is important. Both units cost 40 gold. Now obviously we have a much higher food cost for the elephant, but the big thing is gold, and they both cost 40 gold. Obviously the upgrade cost here is much lower. On the downside, we need aristocracy to really make them useful, which costs some gold again. This costs also gold. It's a tough call. They are both very gold heavy. I just don't think the Centurion makes a whole lot of sense, unless you have a very specific situation that calls for it. It is, however, very usable. It is strong. It is just not one of the best in the game. And we already have a slow, powerful unit that is one of the best in the game at what it does. So my recommendation would probably be the elephant if you can cover the food cost. If you're kind of low on food, obviously the Centurion is always there. And usable. It's perfectly fine and usable. It's just not top-notch, despite the HP upgrade. Next up we have the Granary, and we can already see we have a ballista tower, which is a huge plus. We also have architecture, alchemy, ballistics, everything we need for our towers. So they get a really good grade. We are lacking fortified wall, but I don't think that's particularly important. Medium walls usually do just fine. I think even if you have fortified wall, whether you truly get that upgrade is probably very situational. So having the towers, definitely a good granary, good defense building rating. Just below specialized civs like what we had last time with the Babylonians, were obviously better. But for a regular civ with no bonuses in this department, certainly very, very good. So next up we have the market, and here we can see we have almost all the upgrades. And if you can choose one upgrade to miss out on, it's possibly Siegecraft or Coinage. So we miss Siegecraft. The only thing that is a bit unfortunate is we do not get the +1 slinger attack and range. So that makes it even worse to run out of gold, because our slingers aren't as good as they could be. But at the same time, you usually don't have that much stone remaining in the super late game neither. So I think it's okay to miss that. There could be worse upgrades to miss, like craftsmanship, for example. So the market is certainly passable, pretty good, really no big complaints. Siegecraft really mostly gotten for heavy catapult in my opinion. And since we don't even get catapult, that doesn't play any role. In the government center, we just quickly gloss over it. We have all the upgrades. We have aristocracy for our academy units, which is important. We have these upgrades, which are important for all sorts of units, from archers to the towers to the siege weapons with the engineering. We have architecture, which really plays into the hands of building towers. Nobility, which helps out with our horse units and the elephants. And if you truly want to go for infantry for whatever reason, we also have logistics. Again, if you for some reason want to do that, it is available. In the temple, however, we have a theme developing of techs missing that help with a very certain thing, and let's just look at that. Here we have astrology missing, conversion and healing 30% more effective. That means our conversions kind of lacking. Monotheism, convert enemy priests and buildings, also missing. So not only do we not convert as effectively, we also can't convert enemy priests and buildings. And fanaticism is missing. Priests restore faith 50% faster, and that again goes in line with the other ones. Faith not restoring faster, not as good at converting. So all in all, our priests are usable. Unfortunately, healing 30% more effective, that would be pretty good, but luckily we have medicine, increases priest healing rate. So our priests probably used to heal up our elephants. That's probably the main reason why you would go for priests. For converting, they're really not very good, and since we already are probably tight on gold, maybe 1 or 2 for healing purposes to conserve the gold in the elephant costs, but anything more than that, I don't see priests getting use in the Carthaginian army. And lastly, we have the dark, and it's good. It certainly is. Now, first off, we are lacking catapult, trireme, and juggernaut. That's obviously not very good. So bombarding from the water onto the shorelines, not going to happen. Now to the good parts. We have trireme and fire galleys, and the fire galleys have plus 25% attack. What does that mean in terms of strategizing? It means, unlike the Babylonians we covered last time, where we have no triremes and fire galleys, we can transition much more easily. Let's say you do plan to go for the fire galleys in the Iron Age. If you have the gold, obviously. Gold always a topic in the Carthaginian Civ. But let's assume you do, and you want to switch to fire galleys. You probably in a water fight have war galleys in the Bronze Age. And the issue with the Babylonians was, you both go to the Iron Age, you have your war galleys, you can't upgrade them to triremes, the enemy gets out triremes, takes down your army, and it's difficult for you to supplement with fire galleys. We can upgrade to triremes and then start supplementing fire galleys. We can mix them, we can match that, we can do it however we want. And that's the big advantage of the Carthaginians, because we have no time window where we are vulnerable, like the Babylonians are, where we must transition. We have all the options in the world now, obviously outside of catapult triremes once again, but in a water battle we are extremely good and certainly a strength of the civilization, despite missing the catapult trireme tree. Obviously we also get ballistics, we get alchemy, all very fine upgrades for our ships. So the Dark certainly gets a very good rating despite the missing units. And that's it for the tech tree. Next up we are going to look at where the Carthaginians appear in the campaigns. And they do appear quite a bit. And we will see each other with the campaign screen. So here we are with the campaign screen, and as you can see I have already the Rise of Rome selected, and that's because the first 5 campaigns are from the base game and there was no Carthage there. Carthage was one of the expansion civs in the Roman expansion, and they do not appear in any of these 5 campaigns. So the first one they appear in is the Rise of Rome, and here the first mission they appear in is the Siege of Syracuse. Now as you can see the Carthaginian territory is already marked, so it does make sense. And in the Siege of Syracuse we have one Carthaginian enemy, the red enemy. There's another Syracuse enemy. They have the same name, but one is red, one is yellow, and the yellow one is actually Macedonian, so only one Carthaginian opponent. When we go to the Battle of the Metaurus, we have Hannibal here again. So this is all about Carthage here. And obviously we have 2 Carthage enemies or Carthaginian enemies. And then in Sama we once again have 2 Carthaginian enemies. And obviously it fits from a thematic standpoint. It's all about Carthage here, so making Carthage the enemy. Everything fine, no complaints. When the complaining starts is in the Caesar campaign, because in the invasion of Britain, the Veneti are Carthaginian. Now, I'm not sure how much you know of the Veneti and of the tribes there, but they were not Carthaginian. Just spoiler, but it's alright. Fair enough. You need to give them some civ, and if you feel like you want to balance it out by giving them the Carthaginians because for some reason that's more balanced, then fair enough, do it, whatever. Obviously there is no Britannia civ or anything in like that. So there has to be misplaced civs there. That's fine. That's their only appearance in the Caesar campaign, however. Makes sense, obviously. Caesar didn't fight against Carthage, so we didn't expect them to really show up here. In the Imperium Romanum campaign, they do not appear at all, which also makes sense. In the Imperium stage, Carthage was an afterthought. Enemies of Rome, however, we already see the elephants here. We play as Carthage actually in the Crossing the Alps mission. Up here. Hannibal of Carthage. We obviously played as Hannibal crossing the Alps. I think everyone knows that story, and maybe you have also watched the mission. We play as Carthage, so that's the first mission in the game where we can actually play as Carthage. And we follow that up with the first Punic War campaign, which we could also rename to the Carthaginian campaign, because obviously the Punic War was between Carthage and Rome. And in this campaign, we play as the Carthaginians in all 3 of the available missions against the Romans. So that's where they appear in the campaign. You can play as them, you can play against them. everything fine on that front. I hope you get to enjoy playing with or against the Carthaginians in the campaign or in the single player games or even in the multiplayer, whatever floats your boat. I hope you got a pretty good overview of the civilization and where you can find it and what you can do with it, what its strengths are, what it isn't good at. I hope all that has been covered. And until next time with the next civilization, farewell.